Darling, you were never the perfect daughter-in-law we envisioned, Evelyn Carver sneered, her voice thick with disdain as she glanced at Blair, Nathaniel's ex-girlfriend, standing smugly beside her son. In the lavish kitchen of their Chicago villa, Kenya Monroe froze, her hands trembling over the dinner plate she had just prepared. Nathaniel refused to meet her eyes, nodding in silent agreement, while Blair's lips curled into a triumphant smile. It was clear. This was no accident. They had all conspired to replace her, casting her aside like yesterday's trash. For years, Kenya had been Nathaniel's devoted wife, shrinking herself to fit into his world of privilege and high society. But despite her loyalty, she was treated like an outsider, unseen and unworthy. Now this betrayal sparked a quiet fire within her, one that would soon turn their perfect lives upside down, exposing secrets that shattered empires and reclaimed her stolen voice. If you're hooked already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what's the time there? Stick around to see how Kenya turns the tables in the most satisfying way. The aroma of garlic and thyme wafted through the spacious kitchen of the Carver Villa, a sprawling estate perched on the edge of Chicago's affluent Gold Coast neighborhood. Kenya Monroe moved with quiet grace, her hands deftly chopping fresh herbs on the marble countertop. At 28, she was a vision of understated elegance. Her caramel-toned skin glowing softly under the warm pendant lights, her straight black hair neatly bunched low at the nape of her neck. She wore a simple cotton blouse and jeans, practical for an evening at home, though she'd slipped on a light apron to protect against splatters from the simmering sauce. This was her ritual, her way of weaving love into the fabric of their life. Nathaniel had always praised her cooking, calling it the one thing that grounded him amid the chaos of his rising career in finance. She hummed a soft melody, an old soul tune her mother used to sing back in the modest apartments of Southside Chicago. It was a Friday night, and Kenya had planned a quiet dinner, just the two of them, away from the endless galas and networking events that defined Nathaniel's world. Their marriage, now 3 years strong, had been her anchor, pulling her from a life of scraping by to one of luxury she never imagined. But lately, cracks had appeared. Late nights at the office, curt texts, and Evelyn's ever-present shadow, whispering judgments like poison ivy creeping up the walls. The front door clicked open, and Kenya's heart lifted. "Nathaniel, you're early. Dinner's almost ready. I've got your favorite, braised short ribs." She wiped her hands on a towel, turning with a smile that faltered the moment she saw him. Nathaniel Carver, 33 and impeccably groomed, stood in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space like a storm cloud. His dark hair was slicked back, his blue eyes, usually sparkling with charm, now flat and distant. He wore his tailored suit like armor, the tie slightly loosened as if he'd been rehearsing this moment. Behind him loomed Evelyn Carver, his mother, a woman of 58, whose presence commanded rooms like a queen surveying her court. Her silver-waved hair was pinned in an elegant updo, her pale skin etched with fine lines that spoke of a life of privilege and quiet manipulations. She clutched a designer handbag, her gray eyes sharp as daggers, lips painted a severe red. And beside her, arm linked with Evelyn's in a show of solidarity, was Blair, Nathaniel's ex-girlfriend from college, the ghost Kenya had always sensed but never confronted. Blair, 30 and radiant in her golden blonde waves cascading over one shoulder, flashed a smile that didn't reach her bright blue eyes. She was tall and lithe, dressed in a sleek cocktail dress that screamed old money, her posture exuding the confidence of someone who belonged. Kenya's stomach twisted. "What's going on? Evelyn, Blair, I didn't know we had company." Her voice came out softer than intended, a habit born from years of dimming her light to fit into their world. Nathaniel cleared his throat, avoiding her gaze as he stepped forward. "Kenya, we need to talk." His words hung heavy, laced with finality. Evelyn pushed past him into the kitchen, her heels clicking like judgments on the tiled floor. Blair followed, her eyes scanning the room as if appraising what would soon be hers. "Darling," Evelyn began, her tone saccharine yet slicing, "you were never the perfect daughter-in-law we envisioned." "Oh, you've tried. I'll give you that. Your little meals and quiet ways. But let's be honest, dear. Nathaniel needs someone who understands our world, someone who elevates him. Blair here, well, she's always been family. She gestured to Blair, who nodded with a smug curl of her lips, her hand resting possessively on Nathaniel's arm. Kenya's world tilted. The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering to the counter. What are you saying? She looked to Nathaniel, pleading for him to deny it, but he only shifted uncomfortably, his silence a betrayal sharper than any words. It's best if you go stay with your mother for a while, Nathaniel muttered, his voice mechanical, rehearsed. Just pack your things. This isn't working anymore. Blair chimed in, her voice light as if discussing the weather. It's nothing personal, Kenya. But Evelyn's right. You're just not cut out for this life. Nathaniel and I, we have history and a future. They stood there, a united front. Evelyn with her arms crossed, exuding triumphant disdain. Nathaniel, the coward, staring at the floor. Blair, the usurper, already eyeing the kitchen like it was her domain. Kenya felt the air thicken, the betrayal coiling around her like smoke. They had planned this, whispers behind her back, secret meetings, all while she slaved over dinners and smiled through insults. She, the woman from the South Side, who had given up her dreams of teaching to support his ambitions, was being discarded like an outdated accessory. Her chest tightened, a storm of emotions raging inside. Shock, humiliation, a flicker of rage she hadn't known she possessed. But she didn't scream. She didn't beg. Instead, she straightened her back, her brown eyes meeting Evelyn's with a quiet defiance that surprised even her. Fine, she whispered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I'll go. She turned away, moving mechanically to the bedroom upstairs. The villa's opulent halls, crystal chandeliers, polished hardwood floors, mocked her now, reminders of a life she'd never truly owned. Packing was swift, a suitcase of clothes, her mother's old necklace, a few books. No photos of their wedding, no mementos of the love she'd believed in. As she descended the stairs, they watched in silence. Evelyn with a satisfied smirk, Blair whispering something to Nathaniel that made him nod weakly. Kenya paused at the door, the cool evening breeze slipping in like a promise of escape. You think you've won, she said softly, more to herself than to them. But you've just awakened something you can't control. With that, she stepped out into the twilight, the door closing behind her with a finality that echoed in her soul. The drive to her mother's house blurred in tears she finally allowed to fall. But beneath the pain, a quiet fire simmered, a resolve born from years of being overlooked, diminished. Kenya Monroe wasn't broken. She was awakening. And as the city lights faded behind her, she vowed silently. This betrayal would not define her. It would forge her. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and shadow as Kenya gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale against the dark leather. The villa receded in the rearview mirror, a monument to the life she'd built on sand. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away, focusing on the road ahead. Her mother's house was too far, too fraught with questions she wasn't ready to answer. Instead, she veered south, toward the familiar grit of Chicago's South Side, the neighborhood that had shaped her, where authenticity trumped pretense. Tasha's place was there, a modest brick row house on a street lined with chain-link fences and blooming community gardens. Tasha, her childhood friend, was the one constant in a world that had spun out of control. It was past 9 when Kenya pulled up, the engine ticking down like a weary heartbeat. She sat for a moment, suitcase in the back seat, staring at the warm glow spilling from Tasha's window. How had it come to this? Just hours ago, she'd been chopping herbs, dreaming of a quiet evening. Now she was adrift, evicted from her own marriage. With a deep breath, she grabbed her bag and knocked softly on the door. Tasha opened it almost immediately, her dreadlocks tied back in a colorful scarf, her full figure wrapped in a cozy hoodie and joggers. At 28, like Kenya, she exuded the unapologetic strength of someone who'd fought her way through life's undercurrents. Her brown eyes widened in surprise, then softened with concern. Kenya? Girl, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Kenya stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind her, and collapsed into Tasha's arms. The scent of lavender incense and fresh coffee enveloped her, a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of the villa. They kicked me out, Tasha, Nathaniel, Evelyn, and Blair. They're replacing me, like I was never there. Tasha pulled back, guiding her to the worn couch in the living room, where mismatched pillows and framed photos of family gatherings created a haven of warmth. Replacing you? Start from the beginning. And breathe, sis. You're safe here. As Kenya recounted the kitchen confrontation, the cold words, the united front, Evelyn's sneering declaration that she was never perfect, Tasha's face hardened. She poured them both mugs of herbal tea, the steam rising like unspoken fury. That witch Evelyn always had it out for you. Remember how she acted at your wedding? Smiling like a shark while whispering about your background. And Nathaniel? Spineless. I told you he was too tied to his mama's apron strings. Kenya nodded, sipping the tea, its warmth seeping into her chilled bones. The memories flooded back, unbidden but insistent, pulling her into the past like a riptide. It had started subtly, right after the honeymoon. Nathaniel's family was old money, their fortune built on real estate empires that spanned generations. Kenya, with her South Side roots and community college degree, had been the outlier, the charming surprise Nathaniel claimed to love. But Evelyn saw her as an intrusion. Flashbacks flickered like old film reels. There was the first family dinner at the villa, where Evelyn had critiqued Kenya's outfit, a simple sundress she'd chosen for comfort. Darling, that's quaint, but in our circles one must dress to impress. Perhaps something more refined? Nathaniel had chuckled it off, but Kenya felt the sting, changing into a borrowed blouse that felt like a costume. Then came the galas. Endless evenings of clinking glasses and forced small talk. Evelyn would introduce her as Nathaniel's little wife from the other side of town, her tone laced with condescension. Kenya smiled through it, standing silently at Nathaniel's side, her voice softening to whispers lest she embarrass him. Worse were the private barbs. Once, after a miscarriage Kenya had kept hidden from most, Evelyn cornered her in the powder room. It's a shame you couldn't carry. Perhaps it's for the best. Our family needs strong heirs. Nathaniel knew but said nothing, his silence a deeper wound than any insult. He'd grown distant, his affections cooling like autumn air. Late nights turned into absences, and Kenya found herself alone in that vast house, cooking meals that went uneaten, typing up his reports until dawn, all while Evelyn invited Blair to casual lunches. Blair, with her Ivy League polish and effortless charm, was the ghost haunting their marriage, the one who fit. I tried so hard, Tasha, Kenya whispered, her voice cracking. I changed my wardrobe, learned their etiquette, even took those damn wine tasting classes. But it was never enough. I was invisible, there but not seen, overlooked at every turn. And Nathaniel? He let it happen. He chose them over me. Tasha leaned forward, her eyes fierce. That's because you were trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. You're Kenya Monroe, the girl who organized food drives in high school, who dreamed of teaching kids like us. Not some trophy for their shelf. This ain't on you. It's on them and their narrow world. The words struck a chord, stirring the fire Kenya had felt igniting as she left the villa. For years, she'd shrunk herself, believing love meant sacrifice. But now in Tasha's cozy space, surrounded by reminders of her roots, posters of Black icons, shelves of well-thumbed books, the truth crystallized. She'd given everything, only to be discarded. The humiliation burned, but so did a budding resolve. As the night deepened, Tasha set up the guest room, a small space with a quilt her grandmother had sewn. Kenya unpacked sparingly, her mind racing. In the quiet, she rifled through her bag, pulling out a forgotten envelope from Nathaniel's old jacket pocket, something she'd grabbed in haste. It was a letter, legal jargon jumping off the page, property transfers, signatures forged in Nathaniel's hand alone. Her heart pounded. This wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was calculated theft. Tasha, she called softly, holding the paper. Look at this. They planned it all along. Tasha's eyes widened as she scanned it. We need to get you a lawyer, girl. This changes everything. Kenya nodded, the pieces falling into place. The pain was raw, but for the first time she saw a path forward, not through tears, but through truth. As sleep finally claimed her, the South Side's distant sirens lulled her like a promise. She was home, and from here she would rise. The envelope trembled in Kenya's hands, its crisp edges now creased from her grip. Moonlight filtered through the thin curtains of Tasha's guest room, casting long shadows across the quilt as Kenya sat on the edge of the bed, the letter's contents searing into her mind like acid. It was no ordinary note, a legal document, stamped and notarized, detailing the transfer of their villa and joint assets into Nathaniel's name alone, with Evelyn listed as a co-owner. No mention of Kenya's signature, no trace of her existence in the fine print. The date glared back at her, 2 weeks before the kitchen ambush. They hadn't just discarded her, they'd erased her legally, plotting in the shadows while she slept beside him. Tasha! Kenya's voice cracked through the quiet house. Footsteps thudded down the hall, and Tasha burst in, her dreadlocks swinging like pendulums. What is it? You okay? Look at this! Kenya thrust the paper forward. Tasha scanned it, her expression shifting from confusion to outrage, her full lips pressing into a thin line. This ain't right. That's fraud, straight up. He forged it? Or snuck it through without you knowing? Kenya nodded, the humiliation crashing over her in waves. She'd trusted Nathaniel with everything. Finances, dreams, her heart. Now it was clear, the late-night calls he dismissed as work, the sudden trips to his mother's estate, Evelyn's smug glances. It had all been a setup, a calculated eviction from her own life. They took everything before they even told me to leave. The villa, the savings, it's all gone. I'm nothing to them now, not even on paper. Tasha paced the small room, her energy a whirlwind. This is bigger than heartbreak, Kenya. This is theft. We gotta fight back. First thing tomorrow, we're finding a lawyer. You ain't going down without swinging. Sleep evaded Kenya that night, her mind a torrent of what-ifs and whys. By morning, the South Side stirred with life. Kids shouting on sidewalks, vendors setting up carts of fresh fruit and coffee. Kenya rose with the sun, her reflection in the mirror showing dark circles under her brown eyes, but also a spark of determination. She dressed simply, jeans and a blouse, her hair bunched low in its elegant knot. No more hiding. Today she would uncover the full extent of their deception. Tasha drove them downtown, navigating the bustling streets toward a modest law office in a brick building squeezed between high-rises. I looked this place up last night, Tasha said, parking with a jolt. They specialize in family law, helping folks like us who get screwed by the system. Free consultations for starters. The office was unassuming. Faded carpets, stacks of files on metal shelves, the faint hum of fluorescent lights. A receptionist with kind eyes ushered them into a small conference room, where they waited, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and desperation. Kenya's fingers drummed the table, her thoughts racing back to the villa's opulent kitchen, now likely echoing with Blair's laughter. The door opened, and in walked a middle-aged lawyer named Marcus Hale, his suit rumpled, but his gaze sharp. He was black, like them, with salt and pepper hair and a voice that carried the weight of countless battles. Ms. Monroe, I'm Marcus. Tell me what's going on. Kenya laid it out, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. The betrayal, the united front of Nathaniel, Evelyn, and Blair, and now this damning letter. Tasha handed over the document, her protective stance like a shield. Marcus read it carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. This is marital property, right? Jointly owned? Yes, Kenya confirmed. We bought the villa together after we married. I put in my savings from teaching gigs. But look, no signature from me. And the date, it's before he kicked me out. Marcus leaned back, steepling his fingers. This screams fraud. In Illinois, marital assets can't just be transferred without both parties' consent. If he forged your name or bypassed you entirely, that's illegal. And involving his mother? That's layering on potential conspiracy. But we'll need more. Bank statements, deeds, any other records you have. Kenya's heart pounded, a mix of vindication and dread. For the first time, the betrayal felt tangible, not just emotional wreckage, but a crime she could fight. I don't have much with me. Everything's still at the house, or what's left of it. Tasha jumped in. We can get what we need. Kenya's got rights, right? Spousal support? Division of assets? Absolutely, Marcus replied. Given the circumstances, you could file for divorce on grounds of cruelty and fraud. But first, let's dig deeper. I'll pull public records on the property transfers. In the meantime, gather any evidence. Texts, emails, even old photos of shared purchases. This isn't just about getting back what's yours. It's about holding them accountable. As they talked, flashbacks assaulted Kenya. Nathaniel's casual dismissals when she'd asked about finances. Don't worry, babe, I've got it handled. Evelyn's pointed comments at family events, like the charity gala where she'd introduced Blair as the one who got away, right in front of Kenya, and Blair's knowing smiles, as if she'd been waiting in the wings. The deception ran deeper than she imagined. A web spun from privilege and prejudice, targeting her because she didn't fit their gilded narrative. Leaving the office, Kenya felt a shift, a quiet power blooming amid the shame. The city buzzed around them, skyscrapers piercing the sky like accusations. That felt good, she admitted to Tasha as they walked to the car. Like I'm not just reacting anymore. I'm acting. Tasha grinned, fierce and proud. Damn right. But this is just the start. Marcus mentioned interning or assisting at the firm to learn the ropes. Could be a way for you to stay involved without breaking the bank. Kenya paused, the idea igniting something within. You know what? I think I'll do it. No more being invisible. It's time I learn how to fight their way, quietly but lethally. As they drove back, the envelope in her bag felt less like a curse and more like a weapon. The deception had been uncovered, but the real battle was just beginning. Tomorrow she'd step into that law office not as a victim, but as a force ready to reclaim her life. The downtown law office hummed with the quiet intensity of battles fought on paper and precedent, a far cry from the glittering facades of Nathaniel's world. Kenya stepped through the door the next morning, her resolve hardened like steel forged in the fire of betrayal. The envelope from the villa was tucked safely in her bag, a talisman against the doubt that still whispered in her ear. Marcus Hale had offered her a part-time role as an assistant, filing documents, answering phones, and shadowing cases, not out of pity, but because he saw the fighter emerging in her eyes. Knowledge is your weapon, he'd said. Learn the system, and you'll dismantle theirs. Tasha had dropped her off with a fierce hug and a promise to check in later, leaving Kenya to navigate this new terrain alone. The office was a labyrinth of cluttered desks and overflowing bookshelves, the air thick with the scent of printer ink and determination. Kenya's first task was mundane, sorting mail in the reception area. But as she worked, her mind raced, piecing together the fragments of her shattered life. The fraud wasn't just a document, it was a blueprint of their cruelty, and she was done being the footnote in their story. By midday, Marcus introduced her to Olivia Reyes, a 38-year-old lawyer whose calm demeanor masked a razor-sharp intellect. Olivia was petite, with a neat bob of dark hair framing her thoughtful face, her glasses perched on the bridge of her nose like a badge of wisdom. She'd been with the firm for years, specializing in family law cases where women like Kenya, overlooked, undervalued, fought back against the odds. Marcus tells me you're here to learn, Olivia said, her voice steady as she extended a hand. Good. The law isn't kind to the unprepared. Let's get you started. They retreated to Olivia's cramped office, walls lined with case files and motivational quotes from civil rights icons. Olivia pulled up a chair beside her desk, diving straight into the basics. Marital property in Illinois is equitable distribution. Fair, not always equal. But fraud like this? It tips the scales. Your husband's transfer without consent is marital misconduct. We can petition for temporary support while we build the case. Kenya absorbed it all, her notebook filling with frantic scribbles, hidden assets, spousal maintenance, discovery motions. Olivia's explanations were patient but pointed, weaving in real-world examples that mirrored Kenya's pain. I've seen women walk in here broken, leave unbreakable. You remind me of one, lost everything to a cheating exec, but uncovered his offshore accounts. Knowledge empowers. As the afternoon wore on, flashbacks intruded like unwelcome guests. Kenya remembered the day they bought the villa, Nathaniel's arm around her waist as they signed the deed together. Our forever home, he'd whispered. Now it was a fortress barring her entry. Blair likely redecorating with Evelyn's approval. The thought fueled her. She asked probing questions, her voice growing firmer. What about assets they might hide, like family trusts or charities? Olivia nodded approvingly. Smart. That's where a PI comes in. She picked up her phone, dialing a number from memory. Thomas, I have a case for you. Meet Kenya Monroe. She's got fire. Thomas arrived within the hour, a weathered 48-year-old with a rumpled trench coat and eyes that missed nothing. His salt and pepper hair was tousled, his build solid from years of stakeouts and sifting through shadows. He shook Kenya's hand with a firm grip, his voice gravelly but kind. Olivia says you're up against old money. I've toppled a few of those trees. Tell me what we're hunting. Over coffee in the break room, Kenya laid out the details. The forged transfer, Nathaniel's finance career, Evelyn's charity foundations that seemed more like slush funds. Thomas listened intently, jotting notes on a battered notepad. We'll start with public records, deeds, tax filings, then dig deeper, bank trails, emails if we can subpoena. Families like the Carvers? They bury skeletons deep, but I always find the shovel. By evening, Thomas had already pulled preliminary reports on his laptop. Look here, he said, pointing to a screen of financial ledgers. Evelyn's foundation, Carver Cares, shows large transfers from Nathaniel's accounts. Not donations. Looks like laundering. And the villa? Transferred to a family trust 2 weeks ago, right before the boot. Classic asset hiding. Kenya's pulse quickened, the deception unfolding like a dark tapestry. Flashbacks surged again. Evelyn at a gala, boasting about her philanthropy while sidelining Kenya. Nathaniel's late nights, claiming board meetings. Blair's reappearance timed too perfectly. They thought I'd disappear quietly, Kenya murmured, her brown eyes flashing. But I'm not going anywhere. Olivia placed a hand on her shoulder. This is the quiet fight, gathering ammo without fanfare. File for support first. It'll freeze assets. Then we hit them where it hurts. Kenya spent the next days immersed, shadowing Olivia on client meetings, learning to spot red flags in contracts. Each lesson chipped away at her invisibility, replacing it with armor. Tasha called nightly, her voice a lifeline. You're building an empire of your own, sis. The work was grueling, long hours poring over legalese, but empowering. Kenya documented everything, dates of insults, ignored pleas, even the miscarriages Evelyn had dismissed as failures. No detail too small. Each was a brick in her wall of evidence. Thomas's updates came in whispers, more hidden accounts. Whispers of Nathaniel's embezzlement to fund Evelyn's lifestyle. They're planning something big, he confided one afternoon. A party, engagement bash for him and Blair. Overheard at a club. Perfect timing to expose, but we need ironclad proof. Kenya's heart twisted, but she channeled it into resolve. As the week ended, she stood taller, her simple outfits now carrying an air of quiet authority. The fight was far from over, but she was no longer the overlooked wife. She was the storm brewing in silence, ready to strike. The whisper of impending chaos echoed in Kenya's ears as she stared at the invitation Thomas had procured. A gilded card announcing the Carver family's grand celebration of new beginnings. Nathaniel and Blair's engagement party, set for that very evening at the opulent ballroom of the Drake Hotel, overlooking Lake Michigan's shimmering expanse. Thomas had slipped it to her during their last meeting, his gravelly voice low. This is your moment. Ironclad proof in hand, you walk in, drop the bomb, and walk out. No theatrics, just truth. Olivia had nodded in agreement, her eyes gleaming with strategic fire. File the motions tomorrow. Tonight, you show them you're not erased. Kenya spent the afternoon in quiet preparation, the law office's hum fading into the background as she gathered the folder, thick with documents, bank statements, and Thomas's investigative reports. Her heart raced, but her hands were steady. No more shadows. This was her light. She chose her outfit with care, a simple white dress that hugged her caramel skin, elegant yet unassuming, her straight black hair bunched low in its signature knot. No jewelry save her mother's necklace, a subtle talisman of strength. Tasha had texted encouragement. Go get 'em, sis. Make 'em regret. As dusk fell, Kenya hailed a cab, the city lights blurring into streaks of resolve. The Drake Hotel loomed like a gilded cage, its marble facade aglow under chandeliers that spilled light onto arriving guests. Valets whisked away luxury cars and laughter floated from the entrance. Chicago's elite, politicians and financiers, all drawn to the Carver name. Kenya slipped in unnoticed, her invitation forged by Thomas's contacts, blending into the crowd like a ghost reclaiming form. The ballroom was a spectacle, crystal flutes clinking, floral arches framing a stage where a string quartet played softly. Tables groaned under silver platters of caviar and champagne towers, golden name cards glittering under candlelight. At the center, Nathaniel and Blair held court, his arm around her waist, her golden hair cascading like a crown. Evelyn orbited them, her silver waves impeccable, her smile a mask of triumph as she air-kissed guests. Kenya lingered at the edges, her pulse thundering. Flashbacks assaulted her, similar parties where she'd stood silently beside Nathaniel, enduring Evelyn's barbs. Smile brighter, dear. You look so subdued. Blair's re-entry into their lives, always at Evelyn's invitation, her laughter a dagger. Now Blair's hand rested on a subtle bump under her cocktail dress, the pregnancy Evelyn had hinted at in whispers, a new chapter built on Kenya's ruins. The quartet paused, and Evelyn ascended the stage, microphone in hand, her voice amplified like a decree. Dear friends and family, she began, her gray eyes sweeping the room with faint warmth. Tonight, we celebrate love renewed. Nathaniel and Blair, our perfect pair, embark on a future bright with promise. After trials, we found our way back to what was always meant to be, to new beginnings. Applause rippled, glasses raised. Nathaniel beamed, pulling Blair closer, her blue eyes sparkling with victory. Kenya moved then, her steps deliberate, weaving through the crowd like a shadow turning solid. Whispers followed. Who is she? But she ignored them, ascending the stage's side stairs with the folder clutched like a sword. Evelyn's speech faltered as Kenya approached the podium, placing the documents on the table beside the cake, a towering confection of white fondant and gold leaf. The room hushed, confusion etching faces. Nathaniel's smile froze, his blue eyes widening in horror. Blair paled, her hand instinctively covering her stomach. Evelyn's red lips parted in shock. What is the meaning of this? She hissed, her voice low but venomous. You're not welcome here. Kenya met her gaze, her voice clear and unwavering, projecting across the ballroom without need for the mic. I won't take long. To those who don't know me, I'm Kenya Monroe, Nathaniel's wife. Still legally, despite your efforts to erase me. Gas echoed, phones emerging from pockets. Nathaniel stepped forward, his face reddening. Kenya, leave now. This isn't the place. But she held up a hand, unflinching. This is exactly the place. You've celebrated while stripping me bare. But secrets don't stay buried. She opened the folder, pulling out the first sheaf. This is the deed to our villa, transferred to Evelyn's name without my consent, 2 weeks before you threw me out. Fraud, plain and simple. Murmurs swelled, guests shifting uncomfortably. Next, bank statements. These show transfers from Nathaniel's accounts to Evelyn's charity, not donations, but embezzlement. Hundreds of thousands siphoned to fund your lifestyles, hidden from taxes and me. Evelyn's face drained of color, her hand clutching the podium. Lies! Security! Kenya pressed on, her brown eyes locking onto Blair. And this, a medical report from your private clinic. The child you're carrying? DNA confirms it's not Nathaniel's. The room erupted in stunned silence, then chaos. Whispers turning to exclamations, cameras flashing. Blair staggered back, tears welling, her triumphant facade crumbling. How did you? Nathaniel lunged, grabbing Kenya's arm, his voice a desperate growl. You bitch, you've ruined everything. But she wrenched free, her stance unyielding. No, you did. You took my home, my trust, my voice. Now I'm taking it back. Evelyn slapped Blair across the face, her ring leaving a red mark. You promised it was his. The slap echoed like a gunshot, guests fleeing in scandalized waves. Kenya gathered her papers, handing copies to a waiting associate from the firm. Olivia's backup plan. Legal proceedings start tomorrow. You'll hear from the courts. She turned, descending the stage with graceful poise, the ballroom dissolving into pandemonium behind her. Nathaniel shouting denials, Evelyn collapsing into a chair, Blair sobbing. Reporters swarmed, phones ringing with leaked tips. Kenya didn't look back. The night air greeted her like freedom as she stepped into the street, hailing a cab. The quiet fight had erupted into thunder, and the tables were turning. The cab's tires hummed against the rain-slicked streets of Chicago, carrying Kenya away from the Drake Hotel's glittering chaos. She leaned back against the worn leather seat, the folder of documents clutched to her chest like a shield still warm from battle. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, mingling with the sweet sting of vindication. The ballroom's pandemonium replayed in her mind. Evelyn's slap echoing like thunder, Blair's tear-streaked face crumbling under the weight of her own lies, Nathaniel's furious lunge reduced to futile rage. Guests had scattered like leaves in a storm, phones ablaze with recordings that would soon flood social media and news feeds. Kenya had walked out not as the discarded wife, but as the architect of their downfall. Yet as the city lights streaked by, a quiet exhaustion settled in. The fight wasn't over. It was evolving. By morning, the storm had broken wide open. Kenya woke in Tasha's guest room to her phone buzzing incessantly, notifications piling up like debris. Headlines screamed from every outlet. Carver family scandal, fraud, embezzlement, and a shocking paternity twist at elite engagement bash. Viral videos captured the moment, Kenya's steady voice cutting through the opulence, Evelyn's hand flying toward Blair's cheek, Nathaniel's bellowed denials drowned in gasps. Reporters camped outside the villa, Evelyn's charity offices, and even Nathaniel's firm. Social media erupted in speculation. Hashtags like "Knock Her Carver Collapse" trending as old acquaintances leaked stories of the family's haughty ways. Olivia called first, her voice crisp with triumph. "You did it, Kenya." The exposure lit a fire under the authorities. The state's attorney is launching an investigation into the embezzlement. Federal agents might get involved if those charity funds cross state lines. "We filed your divorce petition. A temporary restraining order on assets is in place. They can't touch a dime without court approval." Kenya paced the small room, her white dress from the night before draped over a chair like a shed skin. "What about Blair, the baby?" "She's vanished," Olivia replied. "Word is she fled to her family's estate in the Hamptons. Engagement ring off. Paternity tests are public now. Thomas leaked just enough to confirm. Nathaniel's in damage control, but it's crumbling." The days blurred into a whirlwind of legal maneuvers. Kenya threw herself into the fray, assisting at the firm with renewed purpose. Flashbacks haunted her quieter moments. Nathaniel's tender proposals in college, before Evelyn's influence poisoned everything. Blair's sly glances at family events, always one step ahead in their game. But now the tables have turned. Nathaniel's calls came desperate at first. Pleas for mercy, accusations of betrayal, then silenced as subpoenas arrived. Evelyn, once the queen of Chicago's social scene, found doors slamming shut, invitations rescinded, board seats vacated amid whispers of scandal. Her Carver Cares Foundation faced audits and donors pulling out in droves. Thomas's digs unearthed more rot, offshore accounts funneled through shell companies, Nathaniel's signatures on falsified loans using the villa as collateral. "They're lawyering up," he reported one evening over coffee at the office, his trench coat slung over a chair. "But we've got the paper trail. Your case is airtight." The courtroom loomed 2 weeks later, a sterile chamber in the Daily Center where justice felt both distant and intimate. Kenya sat poised in a tailored suit Olivia had lent her hair neatly bunched, brown eyes fixed on the judge. Nathaniel entered haggard, his once slick hair disheveled, blue eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Evelyn trailed him, her silver waves dulled, face etched with fury beneath a veneer of composure. Blair was absent, her departure confirmed by tabloids, rumors of a quiet settlement to keep the child's true father unnamed. Olivia presented the evidence with surgical precision. Forged deeds, embezzled funds totaling over $500,000, emails plotting Kenya's ousting while assets were siphoned. Nathaniel's lawyer stammered defenses, marital discord, mutual agreements. But the judge's gavel cut through like truth's blade. This court finds clear evidence of fraud and misconduct, he declared. Ms. Monroe is awarded half of all marital assets, including equity in the villa, plus spousal support pending final divorce. Restraining orders remain. Federal investigation referrals approved. Nathaniel slumped, his empire fracturing. Evelyn stormed out, her heels echoing defeat, only to face reporters outside. Microphones thrust like spears. No comment, she snapped. But the damage was done. Invitations dried up. Her social circle, once a fortress, became a prison of gossip. Nathaniel's firm placed him on leave. His political aspirations, whispers of a mayoral run, evaporated in scandal smoke. Federal agents raided their offices days later, boxes of files carted away amid flashing cameras. Kenya left the courthouse with Olivia and Thomas flanking her like guardians. The weight lifted from her shoulders. Tasha waited outside, pulling her into a bear hug. You turned those tables to splinters, girl. The victory was bittersweet, assets reclaimed, but the emotional scars lingered. Yet as they drove back, Kenya felt a profound shift, self-respect blooming where doubt once festered. No longer invisible, she was the force that had exposed their rot. With the settlement funds incoming, Kenya began envisioning a future unbound. I want to help others, she told Olivia that night over tea. Women like me, silenced, stripped bare. A consulting service, maybe. Olivia smiled. You've got the fire. Let's make it happen. As Kenya gazed out at the city skyline, the pain of betrayal transformed into purpose, paving the way for her rebirth. The skyline of Chicago stretched before Kenya like a canvas rewritten, its towers no longer symbols of exclusion, but beacons of possibility. Weeks after the courthouse victory, the settlement funds arrived. Not a fortune by Carver standards, but enough to seed her rebirth. Half the villa's equity, spousal support trickling in monthly, and the quiet satisfaction of watching Nathaniel's world unravel from afar. Federal indictments loomed over him and Evelyn, their names synonymous with scandal in the city's whispers. Blair had vanished into obscurity, her pregnancy a footnote in tabloid lore. Kenya didn't gloat. She built. With Olivia's guidance and Thomas's occasional check-ins, she leased a modest office space in a revitalized Southside building, a sunlit room with exposed brick walls and large windows overlooking community murals. Second Voice, she named it, the sign going up on a crisp autumn morning. The name echoed her journey, a place for women silenced in marriages, divorces, and betrayals to find their strength again. No frills, just desks, filing cabinets, and a cozy consultation corner with plush chairs and herbal tea on offer. Kenya stood back as Tasha hung the final poster, a quote from Maya Angelou. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. This is it, sis, Tasha said, her dreadlocks swaying as she pulled Kenya into a hug. Your empire. The first clients trickled in slowly, drawn by word of mouth and a small ad in local papers. A young mother from Englewood, eyes hollow from years of emotional abuse, clutching custody papers like lifelines. Kenya listened, her own scars resonating in the woman's story. The gaslighting, the financial control, the feeling of invisibility. I was you, Kenya shared softly, her voice steady. They took everything, but I took it back. Here's how we start. Document everything, just like I did. She connected her to Olivia for pro bono filings, Thomas for discreet investigations. The woman left with hope flickering in her eyes, a referral card in hand. As word spread, the office buzzed with life. A Latina entrepreneur from Pilsen, swindled in a business-marriage hybrid, a black widow from Hyde Park, fighting for her late husband's hidden assets. Kenya became their guide, blending legal savvy with empathy honed from her trials. Mornings began with case reviews over coffee, afternoons with workshops on financial literacy and self-advocacy. You're not alone now, she'd tell them, her brown eyes meeting theirs with unyielding warmth. Your voice matters. Second, third, or 100th chance. Flashbacks wove through her days like threads in a tapestry. She remembered the villa's empty halls, her footsteps echoing in solitude, Evelyn's cutting words at Gallus, reducing her to a shadow. Nathaniel's cold dismissal in the kitchen, Blair's smug intrusion. Those memories no longer crippled. They fueled. One evening, sorting files, Kenya paused at a photo from her wedding day, tucked away in a drawer. She and Nathaniel smiling under a floral arch. She traced his face, a pang of what if lingering, but set it aside. That was then, she murmured. Now she was whole. Tasha became her unofficial partner, handling outreach in the community. Flyers at churches, talks at shelters. "You're changing lives," Tasha said one night over soul food at a local diner, plates of fried chicken and collards steaming between them. "Remember when you showed up on my doorstep broken? Look at you now, queen of your castle." Kenya smiled, her straight black hair catching the light in its low bun. "It's not about me anymore. These women, they remind me why I fought." Success wasn't measured in dollars. It was in the thank you notes pinned to her wall, the hugs from clients who'd won their cases. One, a teacher like Kenya once dreamed of being, regained her home after uncovering her husband's fraud. "You gave me my voice back," she wrote. Kenya framed it beside her desk. Challenges arose, of course. The emotional toll of reliving traumas, the occasional backlash from powerful exes echoing the carvers. Nathaniel even tried a smear campaign online. Anonymous posts painting Kenya as vindictive. But Thomas quashed it with countersuits and public sympathy swung her way. Evelyn's fall from grace was complete. Tabloids reported her selling assets to cover legal fees, her once glamorous life reduced to seclusion. Kenya felt no joy in it, only closure. As winter blanketed the city in snow, Kenya sat in her office after hours, the space quiet save for the hum of the heater. She opened a journal, penning reflections. "I lost a husband, a home, but gained myself." The pain had sculpted her, turning fragility into fortitude. No longer the overlooked wife from the South Side, she was Kenya Monroe, advocate, survivor, beacon. One crisp evening, a new client arrived, a young woman with wide eyes and a story mirroring Kenya's own. Betrayed, replaced, fighting for scraps. As they talked, Kenya saw her younger self in the tears, the clenched fists. "We'll turn the tables," she promised, handing over resources. Walking the woman out, Kenya glanced at the skyline, the lights twinkling like stars aligned. This was her new beginning. Not an end, but a continuum of empowerment, rippling outward to heal others as she'd healed herself. And there you have it, the story of Kenya Monroe, who rose from the ashes of betrayal to build a legacy of empowerment. What do you think? Did Kenya's journey resonate with you or remind you of someone in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how this tale inspired you or sparked a conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on this emotional ride. Your support means the world. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, subscribe for more empowering stories, and turn on notifications so we can meet again soon. Until next time, stay strong and keep finding your voice. Bye for now.